Hello everyone. Today I want to show you what's going on with my garden this year. This is our second year of planting basically the whole backyard, or much of it, in a garden. We learned a great deal last year and we're still learning things this year. So I'd like to share it with you. Just a little background. Last year we developed our beds, most of them, and our planters, and we were not able to get irrigation in, so I had to water by hand for the entire year. And I really didn't want to be tied down again, watering all the time. So this year one of our goals was to get the entire garden on irrigation, and that's been accomplished. But even before that, one of our goals was to get rid of a very badly damaged tree that also was shading a great deal of our garden, and we were able to get rid of that as well with some help. We did have to hire somebody to kind of help us finish up with the stuff that we couldn't do ourselves, but it's out. So those were our two big accomplishments this year, and with that I'll go ahead and begin showing you the garden. This is a wide shot of the garden. I'm just going to pan in both directions for you so you can see in general what we have, and then I'll go back and take shots of each area and tell you what we've got in there. But this is our backyard, and as you can see, pretty much the whole thing is planted, with about the only exception that we've ruled out is that we're not going to plant where there's concrete. Here we have some of our many bean plantings. We've planted in various places, both red beans, which will be a hard bean, dry bean, and we've planted 2 or 3 varieties of green beans. And these are both red beans and some green bean varieties. This particular row is mostly peppers. It has been so hot here. As you may know, the Boise area is basically a reclaimed desert, and it's very hot, very low humidity, and you just have to water and water and water when it's this hot. It's supposed to hit about 102 today, and it'll do that with almost no humidity, and as a result you have to water this garden at least 3 times a day. As you can see, we've got a number of peppers. The ones that are doing well are some of our bell varieties that were a little late in planting. We had to replace some of them. And then if you look over here, those bigger ones, those are jalapenos, which it kind of makes sense that they would grow well in this climate, given that there's a lot in common with Mexico. Here we have our tomatoes, which have been very problematical this year. Last year we were just inundated with a massive tomato crop, but this year we had at least 3 or 4 plants that had the mosaic virus. So we are hoping that the fact that they're isolated in planters will help some of these to avoid it and not get it. We have several that I'm keeping an eye on. Most of the ones I've showed you so far I'm a little suspicious of. And then we have 4 good ones at this point in the planters. I think the problem where we got this virus was actually from the commercial plants that we bought. We didn't start from seed as we intend to do next year, and we started from plants that we bought. And when we noticed that we had a problem, we thought, well, we'll go out and plant a couple in pure soil and get some new ones that have been grown to a larger size. We went out to see what was available, and all the ones that we found were infected with the same virus as they sat in the store. So we think it came directly from the plant provider, which unfortunately was Bonnie. Now what you can see here is something you may not have seen before. It's a technique we learned off of YouTube and decided we'd give it a try. For growing lettuce, you know, you really can't keep lettuce, so its basic use is going to be immediate. And the way this works is you plant a massive amount of seeds in the bucket, and you don't cut head lettuce, you simply allow it to grow as that one on the right is, or the one in the middle of these 3 is, and then you simply take your scissors and you trim it. kind of like you would a small lawn, I guess. And that's where you get your lettuce from. So far, so good. We'll see how this works, and if it works well, we'll use it next year. These 3 planters that you can see here are all actually children's wading pools. We covered them with plastic to protect them from ultraviolet. Put them each on a pallet that we got for free, and that made our construction costs for the containers it sells is only about $15 each. And the second year we've used this technique, we added one this year, this one right on the end here that is planted in green beans. We feel pretty satisfied with them. You can't grow things that require deep roots because you only have about 10 or 11 inches of soil, but it does elevate you up where you can use it, where you can reach it easily and not have to strain. So in the middle one here, this is a bunch of stuff that Carla planted actually. And these items, it's everything from cilantro to peas to kale. And that's looking real good. Actually spinach over here on the end, excuse me, not kale. The kale's over here, which we've been having in our salads. And then also in this last is more green beans. And then that bush over there volunteered, and we were just so curious what it was that we haven't pulled it out. And I think I'm going to lose my bet with Carla because she said that this was going to be a potato, and I thought it was going to be a green bean since that's what was in here last year. But no, it looks to me like it's going to be a potato. So we're going to see what happens here. And at least over here we have cucumbers, and we have various varieties of squash. This bed does need to be weeded. In the back, and I'm going to move over here so you can get a better view. In the back of this row, we have more red beans, which are intended to climb up this fence that has netting on it. And they're just getting to the point where they may start to climb. I'm having to trim these leaves from the squash back, but they're the squash any. They're doing great. You also see one of our 2 primary irrigation systems, which is a drip system that uses PVC pipe with holes drilled in it and valves that limit the pressure. I'll show you the valves here on this one. You'll notice each one has a separate valve. That's necessary because they have different elevations. You just restrict how much goes in, and believe it or not, you do not have to glue the pipe after the valve. So next year we can take everything apart, and if we want to reassemble differently because we're planting differently, then that won't be a problem at all. Kind of big on reusing what we can reuse or repurposing what we can repurpose. And here you have some climbing beans, green beans that are pole beans, and they are in buckets. So we're going to see how they do. As you can see, I provided some lattice work for them to climb up, some metal fencing, and we'll see how they do. Now continuing over, you see another one of our irrigation systems. This was a new planter this year, and we did it out of concrete blocks. The first one we ever did. But the price of redwood at this point is almost as much as the price of the blocks. So we did blocks. I think we failed to put in really good soil. I learned from that mistake. So we have gone back in and put some more amendments in the soil on this one. And here you have 2 eggplant, and in front of those there's 2 pepper plants. There's a little section of green beans that's just coming up. And then in the middle you have onions that are actually, we're going to try and grow real big onions. First time we've done that. And then in these holes are various and sundry herbs, more green beans, and then at both ends there are green onions to be used as green onions. Here you have our potato patch. This first one is Viking red potatoes, and we've already dug the center row out. We did that because this one got hit rather hard by early blight, which is a major problem here for potatoes. So we had to cut all the bad leaves off the ones we left in place, or at least as much as we could get to. We have sprayed an antifungal. I don't do it prophylactically to prevent it, but I will do it if they're infected, and they are. The far bed there is one that you can buy in the store. That is Yukon Gold potatoes. They're not as bothered as much by this as the Viking Red was. Now down here in the in-ground bed, that's a couple of weeks behind the two that were in the planters that you just saw. Let me move here because the noise from the air conditioner, you're probably not going to be able to hear me well. Okay, here we go. A little further away now. This row here, this in-ground bed, is planted with a russet variety. That would be more commonly what you'd see in a store. And as you can see, they're doing really, really well. We anticipate being able to harvest these probably in mid-August, perhaps as early as 2 weeks from now, which would be the end of July. Now, continuing to pan over here, you see our corn. We planted about 90 corn plants. We started them in cups and then planted them as soon as the temperature permitted, as soon as our last frost date had passed. And we have 2 full rows and then one behind that you can't see from this angle. I'll show it to you in a moment. Now, whenever we plant corn, we don't just plant corn. We always plant something in with it. In this end, we planted red beans. And here's the air conditioner again. And then over here, let me come over here to another one of the beds, a little further from the air conditioner. Here we have not only corn that is now taller than I am, but as you can see as I pan down here, I hope, we have beans all intermingled with the corn. Now the idea here is that we would have the beans climb the corn stalks, so they should start doing that hopefully soon. I may have to encourage them by tying some off to the corn stalks. We also had, this was where our tomatoes were last year, and we had several tomato plants volunteer. Unfortunately, it's too late to get them going to produce anything. We learned a great deal last year about growing beans in with our corn, and what we learned was if you put squash in, like the Three Sisters method, then the squash takes over everything at ground level. The corn can do okay because it's above, but the beans are just simply choked out. Now panning over here, I'll come over to this end of this particular row. And panning over here, we have our watermelon patch. And you can see it's got drip irrigation as well, both on the hill and in a little ditch around each one of the hills. We have 3 hills, 6 plants total, and they've just begun to really take off. And we've got this whole area back in here and back over here that the vines can go out in. We're going to try and encourage them not to come out in our walkway, but we may not have any success with that. At the end here we have just a little bit more of the bean and corn combo. And you can see those bean plants are just going like crazy, and the corn is about, largest ones are about 6 feet high. Now to finish out here, we ended up with a few too many bricks. So we're trying to see how we can do growing in the bricks. And we have a row of green beans planted here. So we're going to see what varieties do the best and what placement is best. Well, that's our garden. I hope you get some ideas that you like, and if you do, I hope they work out for you. And you know, nothing original here. It's all stuff I picked up off the net or just learned in other ways. But I'd say don't be afraid of failing. You're going to fail at some stuff. You learn and you do it next year, and you'll do better. And hopefully the year after that you do better. So thanks a lot, and hope you all have success in your gardening.